Audi has a new e-tron in town. It's now called the Q8 e-tron. And here is what this car has to offer. There were three areas that Audi worked on to enhance the customer experience with the Q8 e-tron. The first is, of course, the cosmetic look of the car, which was enhanced to make it look better than the previous generation electric SUV. The second, of course, was enhancing range and charging times. By providing a better battery, offering more range, it makes it a more accessible car for those looking for an electric SUV. The third, of course, was to enhance the driving experience, the dynamic experience, because Audis have always been a lot of fun. And Q8 e-tron, well, let me tell you, it feels a lot nicer to drive than ever before. But let me take you through all of the details one by one. Now, the front end, what you can clearly see are some borrowed bits from the e-tron GT. Remember that sports car? So you see this entire blacked out frame? Well, that was never there before in the e-tron SUV, but it was certainly there in the e-tron sports car. Makes it definitely look a lot sportier. The grille has changed. It's got this plastic grille now, and it's got this glossy effect, a light grey glossy effect. But most important is the badge that has changed right here in the center of the car. Now, this is a two-dimensional badge. It's not a 3D badge. It's not with those chrome elements on it. It now actually looks a little bit like a sticker has been applied onto a plastic body. But, well, Audi thinks this works. Well, I'm not too sure about it. There is an LED light beam that runs across the hood and illuminates this badge. In the Sportback, the badge itself gets illuminated, and there are some other light graphic elements on the headlamps to enhance the look and feel of the car, especially at night once the sun goes down. The Q8 e-tron that I'm driving today is essentially the e-tron. But back then, Audi's electric SUV portfolio wasn't very large, and that's why the name e-tron stuck. But now, as that portfolio has grown globally and diversified, it was essential to bring in further nomenclature to distinguish one product from the other. And so the e-tron has now become the Q8 e-tron. But I've got some very fond memories of this SUV. I've driven it quite extensively. We took this SUV all the way up to Ladakh. If you remember that story, it was a very challenging drive, but the e-tron was absolutely brilliant on that drive. One, because it had, well, usable range. Two, it was a fantastic SUV to drive. The kind of dynamics that the e-tron had to offer, absolutely brilliant, made the journey a lot of fun. With the Q8 e-tron, there's certainly a lot of areas that have been improved upon. I did tell you that the range has been improved. So previously, you'd get about 450 kilometers or 470 kilometers of WLTP range. In actual everyday life, that would translate to about 350 to 370 kilometers of usable range. But now with the Q8 e-tron, what Audi has done is that they couldn't put in a larger battery pack. But what they could do is make the battery more efficient. And to do this, they've packed the cell stacks inside that battery pack even more densely. So effectively, you get much higher range. WLTP cycles for the Q8 e-tron are now about 560 or 570 kilometers for the Q8 e-tron SUV, and it goes up to nearly 600 kilometers for the Q8 e-tron Sportback. Why the higher range? There's one very simple reason for that. The aerodynamic efficiency. The aerodynamic efficiency in the Q8 e-tron SUV is higher than the aerodynamic efficiency of the Q8 e-tron Sportback. What I mean by that is that the Q8 e-tron Sportback is slipperier through air, essentially improving efficiency of that battery pack. Acceleration is brisk, it builds up momentum rapidly, but it also does this very gracefully. So it's not those mad instantaneous bursts of torque and speed that build up, but feels very much in control, very manageable, very easy to drive. And that's one of the aspects of the e-tron that make it very endearing. There is a lot more heft to this power steering system. It's more precise when you want it to be so, or easier to use when you're in urban conditions. This SUV is blunted. It's easy to maneuver. Now, if you hear that buzzer going off in the background, Well, that's because I'm kind of winging it on this expansive highway. Though that's essentially not how you drive an electric vehicle. Because out on the highways, efficiency drops down considerably, and unless you've got plenty of opportunities to brake and get the regenerative system working, you're going to discharge the batteries very rapidly. With those denser batteries, from roughly around a 80 kilowatt hour battery in the e-tron, the Q8 e-tron now has a 114 kilowatt hour battery pack. So obviously range has increased substantially. Charging times have also improved. The e-tron can be charged on a 22 kilowatt AC charger, and on DC that can go up to about 180 kilowatts. With the 180 kilowatt DC charger, the Q8 e-tron can go from 0 to 80% charge in a little under 30 minutes. 100% will take you about 45 to 50 minutes. With a 22 kilowatt charger, the AC charger, this is about a 4.5 hour to around 5 hour charging time to get the most juice into that battery. Audi continues to offer fantastic ownership experience with the Q8 e-tron. You've got multiple service stations across the country where the e-tron can be serviced thanks to several technicians who've been trained to work on the e-tron competently. Audi also provides every owner with 2 chargers, not just one. So you can place one at your home or at your place of work, or one at home and one at work, or just keep one at home, and in case you're traveling somewhere outside, a long distance road trip, then the second charger will come in handy for those long trips where you don't have a charging system handy along the way. Like most electrics, you get instantaneous torque. That makes this a very quick SUV. But then again, this is not something that you'd want for its performance. It's electric, it uses a lot of sustainable materials, and as an end product, it leaves a smaller carbon footprint behind. And that, in a sense, is what the Q8 e-tron's ambitions are. On the suspension side of things, there's been an effort, like I mentioned, to improve its dynamic abilities and, of course, its ride comfort as well. And so the Q8 e-tron, its suspension was worked on, it's been tweaked considerably on the road, on tarmac. It's a lot of fun. And I'll go back to my experiences with the e-tron in Ladakh. You see, climbing up the high altitude passes, going up Barlacha La, Lachalung La, Tanglang La, I'd hoped to recover charge using the recuperative system, the regenerative system, by braking on the corners. Well, that was the hope. But in effect, the suspension works so brilliantly, I never had to lift off the gas or brake getting into a corner. And the Q8 e-tron is just more of that. So yes, taking this car up to Leh is going to be a slightly tougher job than before, simply because the dynamics are so much better. So you'd never ever really have to brake into a corner too hard until you're really pushing your luck. Too fast into a corner? Absolutely. You'll have to brake hard, cut down your speed and make that corner. But otherwise, if you aren't all that fast on the Q8 e-tron, it's very easy to straight line that apex and move on. Now, the Q8 e-tron continues to offer those multiple modes of recharging the batteries. So it's not just having to plug in to an AC or a DC charging system. When you're driving, you've got multiple regenerative modes or discharge systems that control the flow of energy, or rather reduce the flow of energy to a minimum. Now you've got these paddles behind the steering wheel, and they're 2-step regenerative modes. Stage 1 gives you about 0.03 Gs of force. Stage 2, that goes up to about 0.13 Gs of force. And in stage 3, it goes up to almost 0.3 Gs of force. All of that allows the batteries to be charged pretty rapidly. Again, going back to my experience with the e-tron, it was at the top of Tanglangla, and I had a range of roughly about 8 kilometers to go to reach Leh. The distance to Leh from the top of Tanglangla is roughly about 80 kilometers. What you won't believe is that I made it to Leh, just coasting all the way from Tanglangla up to Upshi and recharging the batteries. By the time I got to Leh, I had accumulated almost about 200 kilometers of charge in that battery. That is how efficient, that is how superior the charging system on the Audi e-tron was. And the Q8 e-tron has simply enhanced that even further. Saving charge in your battery is to put it into range mode. You simply go through the infotainment menus to get to the range mode window, click on the button, and this effectively negates or rather switches off certain ancillary functions that draw power from the main batteries until you're able to get to a charging station. If you take a look back through Overdrive's YouTube channel, you'll come across a video where we've taken 3 of India's premium luxury electric SUVs on a road trip to Manali in extreme winter conditions. And in those conditions, the e-tron turned out to be one of the most comfortable to drive, easiest to manage and efficient electric SUVs. The I-Pace, a lot of fun, absolutely brilliant, fantastic dynamics, more sports car-like than an actual SUV. The EQC, luxurious, comfortable, very well packaged. But it was the e-tron that turned out to be the most practical overall, the easiest to drive, the most intuitive to use. On the safety front, the Q8 e-tron gets you a whole array of safety systems, both active and passive, multiple airbags, ESP, ESC, and along with that, there are a few advanced driver assistance systems as well. One of them being blind spot monitors, and of course, adaptive cruise control and lane change warning system. Now, the Q8 e-tron offers you multiple driving modes. You've got the off-road mode, you've got the all-road mode, you've got the efficiency mode, you've got a comfort mode, you've got a dynamic mode, you've got an individual settings mode as well. In off-road mode, the suspension raises itself up. You've got about 176 mm of ground clearance, which is in comfort mode, and in off-road mode, that adaptive suspension will raise the Q8 e-tron's body by another 50 mm. So that takes it close to about 220 mm of ground clearance. In dynamic mode, the body will lower itself down by another 20 mm from the 176 mm of ground clearance. So the effective range of suspension travel is roughly about 70 mm from its lowest point to its highest point, which is quite impressive. So it does not matter where you're driving the Q8 e-tron, you will always be safely perched well above the ground, stable, confident and easily able to access almost any terrain. Having said that, if you're going to go off-road with this SUV, you might want to change the tires because these Bridgestones are more in tune with tarmac conditions. Audi's Q8 e-tron overall is a fantastic package, but I do think there are a couple of misses with this package. The first, of course, is the lack of wireless Android Auto or Apple CarPlay. In this stage of technology, I think that is an absolute must. The second bit that they've missed out on, and this is very essential because our ventilated seats. I simply cannot fathom why Audi does not offer ventilated seats. I'm quickly gonna hop into the back seat and show you just how much space and usable practical features are available in there. And then we quickly hop into the Q8 e-tron Sportback because that coupe style roofline, well, it does change the interior space. We'll just examine if there are any enhancements to it or does it still stay the same as before. Now, as you can see, there's plenty of room in this rear bench, adequate knee room, plenty of room under the seats in fact to place your feet, and well, generous amounts of headroom as well. And you've got that panoramic sunroof, so that sense of space in the rear cabin of this Q8 e-tron SUV is immense. You've got Plenty of features over here as well. You've got the climate control system, so you can control what temperature you want your space to be in. You've got Type-C charging points, and of course you've got an armrest with cup holders. So adequately appointed, comfortable, spacious and practical. But what is the Sportback like? And as you can see, there's, well, less room, less head space for occupants. Nonetheless, it's a pretty well appointed rear space. You get all the features that you'd want, and don't forget the Q8 e-tron Sportback, better efficiency, higher range in this SUV. So I've had a fantastic day driving both the Q8 e-tron SUV and of course the Q8 e-tron Sportback, though a little bit of driving with the Sportback. Nonetheless, both of them are very similar in character, just that the range differs in between the Sportback and of course the SUV. But overall, they're brilliant packages. They've certainly enhanced the customer experience, both through its ownership experience and of course the driving experience as well. I'm looking forward to a day when I can actually take the e-tron SUV, the Q8 e-tron SUV, on a longer trip somewhere, enjoy driving this a little bit more.